Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mr. V's Camping Chair Chat. My name is Mr. V and I'm currently sat in a camping chair at the top of the sort of tower thing down by Turn 1 of Bahrain. I guess it's a tower building. It's like the one tall thing at Bahrain. You know what I mean. Obviously, I am here virtually. I have not been invited to the Bahrain Grand Prix. I sent them many emails, said I was welcome to come down on a VIP part. I said I wouldn't come on a regular ticket. No, of course, we travel in style here. I said business class minimum, and they didn't even return my emails, which is rude. So I'm here virtually. There's some cars going around in the background. We have just had the 2025 Bahrain Grand Prix. And as always, for those of you who listen to the podcast or watch the podcast and use this to determine whether you should watch the race in full, yes, it was a good one. I don't know why I said it like that. It's obviously like a later time than the previous races. It's getting late in the evening and anyway, this was good. Bahrain Grand Prix, best race of the year so far? I don't know. We've had Australia was good. Australia was insane, quite frankly. China was good. Japan was one of the worst races I've ever seen. And then Bahrain was good. So, we're getting pretty spoiled so far in 2025. All the talk of a qualifying championship that was thrown around last weekend. People get so miserable so quickly in Formula One. I'm pretty sure I said in the last podcast that I wasn't worried, that I was expecting some good races. And here we go. It didn't take long. It was great. We had overtakes the whole way through. We had storylines. We had people qualifying out of position. We had random nonsense, a significant amount of random nonsense. Like Formula One always has a little bit. Like Formula One is a very silly sport. People who think this is a serious sport, no, it's not. But we had just a huge bucket load of random nonsense going on this weekend. So let's talk about it. As always, we'll go through a bit of the kind of like week roundup, the happenings in the wider world of Formula One before we got to the track here in Sakir. And then we'll go through on-track action in qualifying in the race. I'm not going to talk about practice much because there's a lot to talk about in qualifying the race, basically. It's a storied weekend with many things. Many things, which is how I like my races to be. I like them to be filled with things. So, the week leading up to this has obviously only been a week since the Japanese Grand Prix. And thankfully, despite the boring race last weekend, F1 never rests, and we're right back into news cycle, stuff happening. One smaller piece of news you may have seen, pictures of this helmet. This will mean nothing for the audio-only listeners, but this helmet, which was put together as a charity auction piece by Sir Jackie Stewart. He wore this while driving a classic Tyrrell. I don't exactly know which Tyrrell. He drove a Tyrrell 06, which is the car in which he won his third and final drivers' championship, and also the car in which he retired. I don't know if any of you know, but Jackie Stewart is one of the drivers, and there's not that many, who won a championship and then said, done. Good for him. So it's his final actual on-track Formula One car, one of his championship-winning cars, and he drove it in a show run here in Bahrain, wearing a helmet signed by all 20 living F1 world champions. Firstly, I didn't know we still had 20 alive. I guess if you asked me off the top of my head, I would have guessed maybe 12? Oh my god, we've got 3 in the sport. Who are the 20? Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, and then going back further, we got what? Jenson Button, Kimi Räikkönen. I don't know how the hell you get Kimi Räikkönen to agree to do anything. Jacques Villeneuve, he actually shows up too much, quite frankly. Jacques Villeneuve was on the commentary for the Sky feed last weekend. Get Martin Brundle back. I guess that Martin Brundle didn't want to fly out to Japan. It's a long way to fly to Japan. Fair enough, but I don't mind, when Jacques Villeneuve turns up and he's talking in the paddock and he's doing a bit of weekend roundup and giving a bit of analysis as an ex-driver. Yeah, that's fine. For the full race, no, I'm sorry, Jack. no. It's a no from me. It's a no from me, fam. I guess we got like Damon Hill, but then going back, how many world champions from the 80s do we still have? Prost is knocking around. We must have like Fittipaldi's in there. Jesus Christ. Anyway, the headline is that this helmet was signed by all 20 living Formula One world champions, including Michael Schumacher, is the main headline here. Obviously, getting all of them to put their signature onto a single thing is crazy news, even if it didn't include Michael Schumacher. But Michael Schumacher signed this helmet down on the kind of like jaw guard. Reports state that he was assisted by his wife Karina, but it's nice news. It's heartwarming news. This helmet is now going up for a charity auction. I would imagine it will sell for quite a bit because that's quite a crazy one-off piece, quite honestly, being worn by Jackie Stewart and then being signed by such an insane selection of ex-champions. So that's really cool. The whole thing is in aid of dementia research. It's Stand Up for Dementia, I believe is the name of the charity. Very cool. Very nice. Heartwarming piece of news. Very cool, Jackie Stewart. Jackie Stewart continues to be just the absolute coolest person in Formula One. Just like undeniable, the GOAT of like Formula One culture, like off track. So Jackie Stewart just one-upping people. It's not a competition, but once again, just showing that he is just like the single coolest person to have ever graced a paddock. Other news, off track this week, not such like happy news, but quite maybe consequential news, important news for the wider motorsport world. I just wanted to read you a quote for this one. I took this role to help deliver greater transparency, stronger governance, and more collaborative leadership. Over time, those principles have been increasingly set aside. That is a quote from Robert Reid, now former FIA Deputy President, as of this week. Robert resigned and released this statement with his resignation. It's not good. Not good for the FIA. I mean, so quite obviously, the FIA has come under a lot of criticism in recent years. I mean, they've come under a lot of criticism kind of always. They're one of these like famously, let's say, insular, I don't want to use the word corrupt, but one could make an argument. Similar to FIFA and other organizations like this, they're not exactly like an open, transparent, publicly elected organization, are they? It's a group of very wealthy people making decisions that benefit wealthy people. But it's an entirely private organization, so I mean, they can do that. But they're very public-facing and they run some very highly public sports, such as this small thing you might have heard of called Formula One. So obviously the FIA has been under much criticism in recent years for just a stupidly long list of things. I would say that it's all MBS. It's not all MBS, but he is obviously the president, and so the buck stops with him. And it's a big old buck, and it refuses to stop. So yeah, having the deputy president resign with quite a scathing resignation message just points to a whole host of issues internally at the FIA. And clearly this organization is just like rotted on the inside. People can say like, it's a private organization, they don't have to do anything for the fans, blah, blah, blah. And people always make the argument like, oh, they govern so much more than just Formula One. Like Formula One fans get so upset about the FIA. It's like, if MBS stopped showing up at every single Formula One event, then I wouldn't be so annoyed by it. But he was there in Bahrain. I don't know if you saw camera shots, but like the top three drivers obviously get out the car. They do the little celebration in the paddock, and then the top three get interviewed. And then they go up onto the podium. And MBS is just dicking around, like in there with the drivers, trying to insert himself and like shake hands with people. Clearly no one wants to talk to him. Go away! Go away! If you don't want to get criticised by Formula One fans, get out of Formula One, you dick! So, yeah. This is just another piece of news indicative of just like a whole raft of issues wrong within the FIA. I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but this is a re-election year, so an FIA presidency runs for 4 years, 5 years. I forget the number off the top of my head, but MBS's first term as president ends at the end of this year. Elections, or should I say like the crowning of the new president, is set to happen in November or December this year. Typically, the sitting president runs unopposed if they can do more terms. So it's not really believed that anyone's going to run against him. There were rumors a few weeks ago that Susie Wolf was interested, but she went on record saying she's not. That doesn't mean she's not, but she's just, not publicly announcing it yet. But yeah, my God, that organization just needs to change. Just burn it down. Just burn it down. Start again. Make a new organization called the Fédération Internationale de Vroom Vroom. FIV, and I will run it. And I will stop. I will stop doing whatever random bullshit MBS is doing. Clearly, it's not working. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about that. It's just annoying news. But Robert Reid, I hope you're enjoying your whatever you're doing now. Retirement, maybe. Have fun. Have a nice time. Enough of that. Let's get on to on-track action around the Bahrain International Circuit for the Bahrain Grand Prix weekend. I'm going to really quickly skim over practice, as I said, because many things to talk about in qualifying in the race. A couple key things in practice to note. The one kind of like highlight that would make all the highlight reels is Fernando Alonso's steering wheel came off. I have heard that those are important for your lap time. It's better if your steering wheel is attached. So that's not good for Fernando Alonso. But actually, these sorts of things do happen more than you think, and it's kind of fine. You'd want that to happen here more than, say, Monaco. If your steering wheel came off in Monaco, you'll have a really, really bad afternoon. So, yeah, that kind of made a headline just because it's kind of a novelty thing, but actually, it's fine. So we went through practice, kind of as you would expect. There's some teams that typically do well in Bahrain, such as Haas have always done quite well in Bahrain, and they were going well again. Red Bull, on the other hand, seemed to be struggling. Ferrari looking okay. McLaren looking good just because they are the quickest car on the grid. So yeah, we come into qualifying with expectations, clearly set expectations that McLaren are going to be on pole position. They probably should have a 1-2 here. They seem to be quickest by a couple tenths. But then really there's a pretty close fight between like Ferrari, Mercedes, particularly in the hands of Russell, Red Bull, particularly in the hands of Verstappen. Interesting qualifying. We get into it. Immediately from the outset, Q1, both Red Bulls are struggling. Max having lap times deleted just because he can't get the car turned, can't get like clean laps in. Same thing for Tsunoda. Both of them struggling, complaining always about like no grip, horrible feel through the brakes. Clearly, they've just not had a good time setting up the car through practice. And indicative as well, Tsunoda almost goes out in Q1. He actually goes P14 in Q1 and so scrapes his way into Q2. But that almost looked really, really not fun for Tsunoda. It was a struggle weekend in general for Red Bull Racing. That is a theme that will continue into the race as well, as you will see. But luckily they scraped in, and then actually both Red Bull Racing scraped into Q3 as well. They end up qualifying P7 and 10. For a team that won the last Grand Prix, P7 and P10 is kind of rough. But silver lining, second Red Bull car into Q3 for the first time this year. Round of applause for Yuki Tsunoda. But that sounds very sarcastic. It partially is because it's a fast car, but still, clearly that car is hard to drive. And so to get it in there in his second race, Yuki definitely seems to be getting up to speed with Red Bull much quicker than any of his predecessors, which is nice to see. It's nice to know that he's not going to get immediately churned up in the wood chipper that is the Red Bull Racing second seat. So that is promising. That is promising for Yuki Tsunoda's career. Still obviously not on the level of Max Verstappen, but he's not a superhuman deity sent from another planet, so let's have realistic expectations here. But yeah, good for Yuki Tsunoda, gets it into Q3, the first time that car's been there in a long time. I don't exactly know what race it was last year, but it's been a while. That's pretty good. The other storyline from Q1 that really stood out to me, Jack Doohan put his Alpine P5. P5, it's only Q1, so it's not the final starting grid, but Alpine has had a good weekend here in Bahrain. They were looking just like solid all throughout the weekend. I said in preseason testing that I was confident Alpine were the 5th fastest car. They very much seem to be showing that this weekend. They had a couple more wobbles going into it. Like they've been wobbly, as Alpine does, so far this season, and the wobbles haven't stopped, but they're kind of getting back to where I thought they should be. Doohan puts it P5 in Q1, which is excellent. Pierre Gasly was a bit lower down, but both of those drivers were showing some like very promising times all throughout qualifying, so that is pretty exceptional for them. We then get into Q2. Out in Q1, we had Oliver Behrman qualifies P20, just like couldn't get it hooked up together, so yeah, not good for him. Lance Stroll P19. Lance has had 2 back-to-back just weekends to forget. Are we in a period of Lance midness? Lance is one of these drivers who goes in like big waves and he'll have a couple weekends where actually he's looking very good. The first 2 weekends this year, he was looking quick. That has ended. That has ended. We're back to slow Lance. So Lance P19, Bortoleto P18, Liam Lawson P17 goes out in Q1, which I think really... This, with Tsunoda getting to Q3 and then the results from the race and what happened during the race, it's like really now killed off any kind of discussion about a further Red Bull Racing seat swap. Lawson, people might have said it was just the car and like he'll get back in the RB and he's going to be beating Tsunoda. That has not happened. Lawson continues to have another difficult weekend as he did in Japan. And he was like struggling in the race as well. So yeah, clearly Lawson has got some like mental recovery to do after the torment, the trip to hell and back that was his 2 weeks in Red Bull Racing. So yeah, he goes out in Q1 along with, who was P16? Do I not have a P16? Oh, it was Nico Hülkenberg, both the Saubers, but I mean, are you surprised? So we get into Q2 and almost immediately, Esteban Ocon slams it into the wall coming through turn 3. A bit like gritting your teeth when you see on the timing screens that a Haas has gone flying off into the gravel after turn 3. Bit of a like visceral memory about that one. So I was a bit like, ugh, and then the camera pans to him. He was okay. He went through there, obviously got on the curbs. Turn 3 is a fast right-hander after you come through turn 2. But the optimal line, you have to get like quite heavily onto those curbs, but you can catch it with your floor, unsettle the car. That's what he did. Car spins around and goes into the barrier backwards. Bit of a hefty bump, to the back of the head. Get checked out for concussion, but he was fine. That red flags Q2, which means we come back into it with less time, but still, it's not like he red flagged it with like 3 minutes to go and everyone had to rush out. He red flagged it with like 8.5 minutes to go, I think. So, yeah, it actually didn't disrupt it too much. It just means Ocon qualifies P15. We then get some weird news. I realized that I was reading out the starting grid from Sunday, not the final qualifying classification. So I have delivered you fake news. Nico Hülkenberg did not go out in Q1. Nico Hülkenberg progressed into Q2. Alex Albon got knocked out in Q1 in P16. But we got some news, and actually this news came at the start of Q3, that Nico Hülkenberg's flying lap from Q1 had been deleted. What? From the time he set that, we then had a break, all of Q2, and then a break, and then Q3 started. And then you figured out he went over a white line? What the hell? Actually, what the hell? That is insane for a car to progress into Q2. Do all of Q2, qualify P14, and then be told that actually no, you should have been out like 40 minutes ago. This was really the first, but sadly not the last major organization fuck up that happened here in Bahrain. Obviously we get issues like this and we get penalties investigated after the race and people being demoted off the podium, yada yada yada. Like, it's not the first time this kind of issue has happened in Formula One, but you have one job. In qualifying, you have one job, and that is to make sure that people's lap times are clean lap times. That's it. Like, I understand there's an argument. It's like, there's 20 cars to monitor, and see if all of them are going over white lines and like, oh, it's tricky and you have to like watch back the video footage. Hire one person per car to watch the onboard and see if they're going over the lines. Yeah, you know, trackside cameras aren't always reliable because there's all different angles and corners aren't always straight, so you can't always have like tangential camera shots. Hire a person to watch vehicle onboards and determine if they went over the white lines for every car. It's 20 people. Formula One makes like hundreds of millions per race. Hire 20 people to watch the onboards. It's insane. 40 minutes late, a car that should have been out in Q1 now gets told that they are out in Q1 and they actually qualified P16 is ludicrous, which means that Alex Albon, who missed out on Q2, should have been competing in Q2, and he got unlucky in Q1 because actually his teammate Carlos Sainz got to Q3. Alex Albon could have qualified like P8 on the grid, and instead he got promoted up to P15, but that's not the consolation that he would have wanted. I don't understand why we have organizational issues like this. Like, yeah, it's complicated. Yeah, you got these cars traveling around fast and transponders are difficult and things break and electrical equipment's not robust and there's loads of data to look through. It's like, just figure it out. Oh my God. It really can't be that hard. You get like volunteer online leagues for no money in like R Factor 1, and they will have stewarding better than this. Actually, what is going on here? So yeah, that really annoyed me because there's just no excuse for not seeing Hulkenberg's invalidated lap time sooner. Part of the whole point to have the gaps between the qualifying sessions, part of it is for the teams to come in and, you know, change tires, refuel, track is reset, blah, blah, blah. But in that time, you should be reviewing this footage. It's just, I can't believe that the wealthiest, most viewed motorsport has these kind of issues. Sorry, it ran over, but oh my God, actually. And it wasn't the last thing that happened this weekend, as we will see. Formula One needs to like really, really sort their stuff out with these kinds of organizational things. We figured these things out a long time ago. Anyway, we get Q2, kind of no other major storylines apart from Ocon like ripping his car in half. Ocon, obviously, after his crash, does not set a time, so qualifies P15. Hulkenberg qualifies I want to say 14, but then he obviously gets sent back to Q1. So Alex Albon actually starts P15 on the grid. We then have Fernando Alonso P13, Isaac Hadjar P12. The RB, which was doing so well in getting into Q3 every race this season, has not, but I think it looks like some other teams are figuring their stuff out. And also, you would think Bahrain is a track that really benefits straight line speed, which is what RB has in absolute spades. But it's sort of more geared towards, it's more of a traction track. It's like a rear wheel. It's your ability to accelerate track. You would think it's a straight line speed track, but it can be deceptive, which is not really RB's strength. So they go out in Q2, along with Jack Doohan in P11. And as I said, he was looking so good, faster than Gasly. P4, 5 in Q1. Really unlucky for Jack Doohan to get knocked out in Q2. Like, that Alpine clearly had the pace to go faster, clearly had the pace to get to Q3. Gasly does get to Q3, so pretty unlucky for Doohan. Obviously, the rumours around Doohan being replaced by Colapinto continue. He could have really done with like a strong starting position up in the top 10, and maybe a couple of points from this weekend, because the Alpine could have done it, and he could have done it. He was looking okay. Jack Doohan, on like 90% of his laps, looks incredibly solid and has decent pace, but is just lacking that like last 10% of consistency, and has had a couple times where he drops the ball, like, you know, just setting a slightly faster quali lap in Q2. It's such a shame for Doohan because he is actually looking really promising as a rookie. Q3, in the main headline here, after Jack Doohan went P5 in Q1, his teammate Pierre Gasly goes P5 in Q3 in an Alpine? What? Like, they were going well, but that should have not been P5. That's certainly not. We periodically get these flashes of COVID era Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly, after he was demoted back down from Red Bull, was driving for AlphaTauri at the time. And back in 2020 and 2021, and he would qualify P6 every race in a car that had no business being that high up the grid. And he's doing it again. How are you doing this, Pierre? I love to see it. It's great to see. So he's up in P5, wondering how the hell he got there. Alpine mechanics couldn't find his car when they went to the grid. They were looking down the back and they just couldn't find it. No, actually, they knew where it was. But yeah, incredible to see. Oscar Piastri gets pole. Kind of unsurprising that McLaren got pole. But then at the very front of the grid, not a McLaren front row lockout, which many people expected they would get. We then had George Russell qualifies P2, then Charles Leclerc, then actually Kimi Antonelli set a very nice lap. It was actually not too far off George Russell, which is very impressive from him. Then Pierre Gasly, then Lando Norris, followed by the driver who is 1 point off him in the Drivers' Championship going into this race, and Max Verstappen in P7. Then we have Carlos Sainz in P8. Very good for him. Carlos has had, I would say, a bit of a shaky start to his Williams career. And so getting into Q3, qualifying Q8, looks like he's kind of turning a corner. Got a £10,000 fine for, having a stomach problem at the national anthem last weekend. But he's gotten over it. He's past that, as it were. It looks like it's going okay for Carlos Sainz. Will that continue in the race? We shall see. And then P9, we have Lewis Hamilton, who was setting some decent times throughout Q1 and Q2, was very similar to Leclerc, but Charles Leclerc is one of those people, you get to Q3 and like a switch flips. You could still make the argument that Charles Leclerc is the best qualifying driver in Formula 1, like the best Q3 driver, and I wouldn't argue with you. Absolutely phenomenal. And so Charles Leclerc hits another level. Lewis Hamilton couldn't quite find it. He's still in his fourth race for Ferrari, so fair enough. He qualifies P9. And then Yuki Tsunoda up into Q3, but can only do P10. That Red Bull does look like a handful, though. They repeatedly had lap times deleted, lap times not set. So yeah, they were struggling around the place, but to get into Q3 is good for Tsunoda. I guess the one thing that characterizes this qualifying, and actually this race as well, is it was just messy. It was scrappy. Red Bull was having loads of issues, but they weren't the only one. Tons of lap times deleted, tons of people making loads of mistakes. Bahrain is a tricky track. I mean, famously, turns 9 and 10, you have to be hard on the brakes, whilst with quite a lot of steering lock to get through this left-handed braking zone into a tight left-hander turn 10. And many other points in the track are very tricky as well. So it's a track that can catch people out. Very tricky track to get pole position on. And we just had tons of mistakes, which means we get a very shaken up grid order. And I like it. It's good for Formula 1. It gets to be a bit of a downer. It gets to be a bit predictable when it's just the same every weekend. Having, the championship leader, Lando Norris, qualify P6 with his rival P7 next to him on the grid. To have Oscar Piastri, the next challenger, way up in pole position with a chance to capitalise and take the championship for himself. George Russell doing just George Russell things. It's just great. So really, really enjoyable. Really love to see it. I say make it trickier. Throw more curveballs. Put weird tyre choices in Pirelli. Do something. This was nice. This is how qualifying should be. Qualifying should never be predictable. And I do think we're going to see more of this weekend. We've had talks that this is going to be a qualifying championship. I don't think that's true. But even if that was true, I don't hate that because I think qualifying is going to continue to be very interesting this year. The cars are obviously very close together. McLaren is clear at the top. Realistically, McLaren should be getting pole position every race, at least for the next few. But behind that, it's anyone's game, like Russell, Leclerc, potentially even Kimi Antonelli, Verstappen, Pierre Gasly, maybe. Anyone could be getting sort of P2, P3 on the grid in any order in the top 10. And it seems that anyone can be in the top 10. Maybe not like Liam Lawson and Gabriel Bortoleto, but other than that, Lance Stroll, But other than that, it really seems like anyone could just be anywhere in qualifying, and that is fantastic for Formula 1. it just means every single weekend is absolute nonsense. You got that one friend on F1 Fantasy who's made like a full meme team where they just took like 5 rookies and they're now winning the fantasy because for some reason that's the optimal way to set up your team. You got like so many storylines, so many things to talk about. A shaken up grid just means more overtakes in the race. Drivers have more to prove. So good. So really love to see it. Really exciting. Really excited for the next few races as well, because I just think we're going to get more of the same. Places like Jeddah is really tricky to qualify, so I think we're going to get shaken up grid order again. Love to see it. Love, love, love. Thank you, Formula One. Good job. Everything else you did this weekend, bad job. In qualifying, good job. Well, not with the timing. And I guess actually there's nothing that Formula One did. The drivers and teams, good job. Formula One, ignore what I just said. One final thing though, before we get to the race, a couple grid penalties to be applied. And most importantly, George Russell gets demoted down from his P2. So Mercedes were actually penalised for sending their cars out into the pit lane too early for the start of Q3, I want to say. Or maybe Q2, for one of the qualifying sessions, whatever. So you may have noticed at the start of qualifying sessions, cars go out into the pit lane and queue up at the end and wait for the green lights. They can do like a banker lap as soon as possible at the start of the qualifying session. Not every qualifying session, some tracks it's not optimal to do that, but Bahrain was one of the places where, yeah, you did want to do that. You may have thought that the teams can go and queue up whenever they want, but no, the pit lane is closed for a period of time in the break between sessions, and that makes sense. You know, you want to give people a time to walk around. If someone's on the pit wall, you want to give them like a safe opportunity to just like walk back over to the paddock buildings. You can cross at any time. There's no rules against that. If you are a person who jump in front of a car, you're probably going to get a fine for your team, but you are allowed to like cross at any time, I believe. But there are times when the pit lane is completely closed for cars. And so the pit lane opens, cars can then go and queue up, and then the green light comes on and they can leave and go on track. Mercedes sent their cars out into the pit lane before they were allowed to go and queue up. And so they got penalised 1 grid position each, which means Russell goes down from P2 into P3, and Antonelli goes from P4 into P5. So not huge, not hugely consequential grid penalties, just a bit of a silly one. Honestly, like, I guess it's silly from Mercedes because they should have a clock, you would think, and some kind of system. You would also think there's just a system from the FIA, like the timing system, that just comes up with a green light and it goes like, pit lane open. You would think that would be a simple one. But as it transpires, maybe that system wasn't working, or maybe it just doesn't exist at all, because there were many other similar things failed in the race. So yeah, a bit of a strange one, but not too consequential. George Russell goes down to P3, but I mean, he got back up into P2 like 200 meters into the race. So, I mean, it doesn't really make any difference, does it? So we get to the race here in Bahrain. Jackie Stewart does his parade laps. It's all hunky-dory. Everyone turns up for the national anthem this time, so no 10 grand fines. Excelente. Piastri lines up on pole, Leclerc alongside him, Russell behind. Then a couple places back, Lando Norris lines up a bit in front of his pit box. Little nose of the car in front of the white lines. Or should I say the tyres of the car in front of the white lines? Lando, you naughty boy. So we start the race. Immediately, Lando is under investigation for lining up incorrectly, starting procedure infraction. We get some onboards, and yeah, he just rolled out the front of his pit box. That's a slam dunk, so he gets a 5-second penalty immediately, which doesn't help if you're trying to fight your way back up from P6 to like win the race. Silly Lando. And the thing is so ironic because Lando Norris, famously, particularly throughout last year, renowned for having not good starts. This year, he starts P6 and gets up into P3. Like at turn 4, he overtakes Leclerc to get P3. So it's suddenly a good start from Lando Norris. He's turned a leaf. Like, this is the championship material we want. No. He was outside his pit box, 5-second penalty. I was like, it's so ironic. He just can't catch a break on opening laps. Even if his driving is correct, his parking lets him down. Lando, man. I feel bad, honestly. It gets to a point when it's like so many things it's just like kicking someone when they're down at that point. But like, he's never going to defeat the like first lap woes reputation. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. Some other stuff that stands out in the first few laps: Kimi Antonelli doesn't have the best start, drops down a couple of places on the first lap. He's then trying to fight his way back because that Mercedes has very good pace, as George Russell is showing, hanging on in P2, not on the back of Piastri. Piastri just disappears up the road. He's just gone. He just has one of those races where, for all he knows, 19 cars behind him crashed. Like, I'm sure Piastri saw no one and fought with no one and just drove 57 laps, and then the race finished. So he was just gone straight away. George Russell, though, was staying in P2 and doing his best not to be caught by Leclerc or then Norris behind him. So that was good. The Mercedes clearly had very good pace. Antonelli was using that pace to make up for not a great grip position. Oh no, a decent grip position, but not a great start. Fighting his way back through. A couple laps into the race, makes a send on Carlos Sainz for P6. Bro, it was not on. This was down at turn 1. So obviously you get the slipstream with DRS. You can come from quite a long way back, and if you're confident on the brakes, you can obviously it's a dive bomb corner if there ever was one. Sharp right-hander, long straight, relatively grippy depending on your tires. If you're going to dive bomb anywhere, it would be down at turn 1. But oh my god, like Formula 1 obviously famously now has quite strict rules about making moves from a long way back, being alongside, going into a corner, being alongside at apex, yada, yada, yada. Antonelli comes in there from fucking 2 miles back, dive bombs the hell out of Carlos Sainz, just sends it towards the apex, tires smoking. And honestly, a lesser driver than Sainz would maybe not have noticed and just turned into him. Antonelli's so lucky that Sainz saw that and like kept out the way, because he so easily could have wiped them both out. And as I was watching this, it gave me a thought. It first gave me a thought of like, oh shit. But then it gave me a second thought of, this reminds me of someone. This reminds me of a young Dutch Max Verstappen of, sort of like 8 years ago. I like this kid's style, Is it legal by the rules of Formula 1? Potentially not. But is it fun to watch? Hell yeah. Kimi obviously has a lot of, let's say, goodwill in Formula 1. Very popular fans, seemingly very popular in the paddock as well. The Mercedes golden child. He's not exactly like fighting for a seat in the same way as many other rookies are. So he's got a lot of goodwill, and he can kind of get away with being a bit cheeky on track. And thank God, because there's cheeky and then there's a dive bomb like that. But yeah, all of that aside, it is fun to watch sometimes. It is fun to watch an enormous lunge from just like eons back, from literally like different time zones. It is fun to watch, particularly when nothing goes wrong. So yeah, Antonelli continues to have a very like, what is the word? Not enigmatic. He's not an enigma. I know what he's doing. There's a word I'm looking for. It has like an M in it. Doesn't narrow it down that much. Good. He has an enjoyable driving style. And so yeah. But that was a bit mental. He probably is going to get into trouble later this year. I can see Antonelli making a move like this and the driver ahead having none of it and just turning in on him, because it will be Antonelli's fault. I can see him getting into trouble in that kind of way. It will be a learning opportunity for him. Hopefully he does learn and, gets a bit cleaner. And this is not to say that all of Antonelli's overtakes are like, pushing the limits and are bad overtakes. He made some very good overtakes in this. He was having a lot of luck with basically switchbacks on people up at turn 4, braking more in a straight line, earlier turn in, and then just like coming back on people, getting like a tight exit from turn 4 and overtaking them through turn 5 and 6. Antonelli made multiple overtakes throughout this race, lots of them very good, lots of them sticking. So showing some very good racecraft, but it's not 100% clean, let's put it that way. I do think he's going to get caught out at some point during this year, particularly against someone like, Max is the kind of person, because Max is the kind of person who's going to be at the front, and Max is the kind of person, if he's fighting for like a podium, he's not giving it up without a fight. Obviously no one is, but like Max particularly. But also Max, has come out and said in interviews this week that he's not fighting for the championship this year. He's just here to participate. So if he's fighting for a P3, but at the same time, he doesn't mind too much about losing those points to teach someone a lesson, Max would just turn in on you if you do that to him. So I predict Mr. V's visions of the future that there will be a situation like that for Antonelli soon. We shall see. Red Bull Racing. As I said, Red Bull Racing struggling in qualifying, struggling to get their car set up, struggling just to set any clean laps, and then continuing their struggles in the race. Max particularly complaining throughout the race just about multiple issues with the car, can't turn, overheating, can't brake, too slow, tyres feel bad, just really anything. He was just complaining, so clearly there's some issues going on with that car. But then also issues with the pit stops for Red Bull Racing. So you may have seen cars now, you pit stop, you obviously have all four wheel guns, and then you used to in Formula 1 have a lollipop man, a guy with a big sign that says stop, and then he flips it and it says go, and then he tells you when to go. Now you actually just have lights which kind of hang down above the driver's head, obviously higher than the car so the car doesn't hit them, but you have lights that hang down, and then the guy who would have been the lollipop man is still there, but he just has like a little panel with a switch. And so when he sees that all of the wheel guns are complete and the jacks are lowered, he just presses like a big green button and the driver gets a green light and then they go. Which is a bit more of a rapid system. You don't accidentally smack your driver in the face with a 10-foot pole, which is for the best. But Red Bull Racing's traffic light system seems to be malfunctioning for the first couple of pit stops. Max Verstappen comes in, it's reading red light with like a flashing yellow light, and then clearly the chief engineer is pressing the go button, the big green go button, and the lights just don't change. So Max Verstappen is like, oh, I guess my wheels haven't been gunned on properly. So he just doesn't go, and then it takes the team on his radio saying go, 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 and so he has like a 6-second pit stop or something. These systems are bespoke and one-off, and so they fail. They're not like robust hardware that's sold to millions of people and gone through all this testing. Like, it's a one-off system, and it's just a wire. It's just a button with a wire, so like it can fail. But very pivotal to your pit stop time, very pivotal to your overall race time, and not something we'd expect to see from Red Bull Racing. Historically, like the kings of the pit stop, historically always the fastest and most consistent of all the teams in pit stops. Very unlike them to have this kind of malfunction. And it happened again. Yuki Tsunoda had to have the same thing, had to have the team tell him to go because he just had a red light. And then again, Max's second stop, just a slow stop. Couldn't get the front right off, not like Red Bull at all. And so that team is looking shaky. Commentators alluding that maybe, the shake-up of personnel in Red Bull, and there has been a big exodus of personnel from Red Bull in the last few years. People like, I want to say Dan Fallows, who was a design chief, over to Aston Martin. People like Jonathan Wheatley, who was, I want to say, trackside operator like sporting chief, off to Sauber, now Sauber team principal. I would say it's more than that. Like, Jonathan Wheatley wasn't the guy pressing the button. He was not the guy soldering the wires together in the traffic light system. Like, it's more indicative than that, but it seems indicative of like pressures mounting up within the Red Bull organization, shorter, more strict design deadlines, engineers not being given enough time to design and test new parts to bring to races, funding issues potentially, shaky for Red Bull Racing. All of this really culminates that Verstappen and Tsunoda just couldn't really get anything going during the race. They both make up one place from their grid slots. And so Verstappen finishes P6 and Tsunoda finishes P9, but you would expect more, which means they finish behind Gasly. Tsunoda finishes behind Gasly, behind both Ferraris. Red Bull, I'm sure, are expecting more from this weekend. This is a very good track for Ferrari. Every track is a good track for McLaren currently. And so, maybe they were the third fastest team, but with Max Verstappen, you'd probably expect more than this. And so, not a good weekend for Red Bull Racing. They just couldn't get anything going. They were just kind of stuck down there at the bottom of the points paying positions. couldn't really make any overtakes apart from when they had better tyres after pit stops. And so Red Bull kind of just demoted down to like 4th best team by the looks of it. Other things during the race, yeah, Liam Lawson once again, after being put back down to RB, these last 2 races have just been struggle weekends for Lawson both times. Lawson this weekend looking so scrappy during the race, had multiple instances of contact. Had contact with Lance Stroll, had contact with, I want to say, one of the Saubers. He got 2 penalties applied at the end of the race, both for causing a collision, one for 5 seconds and one for 10 seconds. Lawson clearly is just a bit like, it's just a bit shaken up. And that would happen. That would happen if you get locked in a room with Helmut Marko for any length of time. He needs a couple like quiet races, just not crashing, to get back in the groove, because he was scrappy last year when he was in the RB. Scrappy, but not sloppy. And it very much has transformed into like sloppy for Liam Lawson this year. So it's not going well for him. There's always a chance in Red Bull that rumours will pick up once more. Rumours of being dropped out of RB entirely. Not a good year to be having a shaky year, because obviously they have multiple juniors, Iwasa, but more importantly, Arvid Lindblad coming up through the junior ranks. Arvid Lindblad, a name that Christian Horner will not stop saying. Clearly, Christian Horner's new golden child. And so they're going to be looking at their options for 2026. Liam Lawson needs to sort some stuff out if he wants to stick around for multiple years in RB. But yeah, sloppy from him, not looking good. You know what else was sloppy during this race? The timing tower. the entire organization of the television broadcast was just rough for this entire weekend. I mean, it's not a new thing. F1 famous for its bad camera direction. It varies race by race. I mean, Monaco is regarded as having some of the worst camera direction, but that's because they historically have always insisted on having their own director for the race. Normally there's like a traveling Formula One director. You may have, they talk about it sometimes. There's a big tent, there's the F1 logo on the top, and that's the Formula One like media center. And so they have like a director, the same way as any other television show would. And, camera operators and people organizing, people like watching all the different onboards and reporting in like, oh, this battle's happening, we could cut to this camera. That has famously been bad. It goes up and down. Sometimes they kind of get it good. Sometimes they kind of don't get it good. It was not good this weekend. We had multiple times where they cut away from fights. You would literally have cars like coming up alongside in the slipstream, coming like side by side with the car to make an overtake down into braking. And it would just cut away to like a different battle. It's like, what are you doing? Honestly. But then we had some actual technical failures. So we initially had George Russell, who was running in P2, but then on the timing tower, dropped down to like P20, as if he had like crashed or something. The whole grid had overtaken him. This was not the case. He was still lapping as normal. But clearly his transponder, and so basically the transponder is like it's a positioning device. It's not a GPS device. Around the track, there's multiple, I guess they're like radio frequency gates. The same thing as if you go to like a karting track or anything really. Anyway, the car has a little sensor, and there's multiple like receivers all around the track, every mini sector, and this is how mini sectors and the wider like big sectors, the 3, sector 1, sector 2, sector 3, are measured. The car goes through all of these gates around the track, and as they pass through, transponder goes, Russell's just gone past. And that's how you get the timing tower showing the gaps between cars, updating like every few seconds, because it updates every time they go through a mini sector. You can calculate like how long between Piastri going through and Russell going through. Russell's transponder clearly failed. That's not good. That's not good for Russell. Shows him dropping down to P20 on the timing tower. Okay, sure. But for some reason, that crashed the entire timing tower. What? That doesn't seem like it should happen. Like if you get one data point just stops updating as if and the computer would basically just think that Russell has crashed. Okay, yeah, that's not good, but you could just show him at the bottom and then just remind people like, oh, Russell's 2 and P2. Why does it crash the whole system? That makes no sense. I guess I would assume that someone quite literally tried to turn it off and on again. tried to turn the entire system off and on again to try and pick up Russell's transponder, and then just like crash the whole thing for about 6 laps. That would be my my guess, but oh my god, that is not good because it's very visible to everyone watching. We've had a couple times, I want to say it was in Australia, and the timing tower froze for a good like 4 laps, and like none of the intervals between cars updated just for ages. But this time it just went away. The whole thing was gone. It was saying replay for a while, even though we weren't in a replay. Just like the whole thing broke. That is not good. And then it just continued to be broke. Obviously, something was up with Russell's car because he was having multiple electrical issues. He actually got brought in for investigation because his DRS button seemed to be on the wonk, and so he couldn't open DRS. And then because his transponder was broken, they didn't have the automated system to tell him he's got DRS. So normally how it works is if you're within a second going through the DRS detection point, then when you go through DRS activation point, you get a beep come in your in your earpieces automatically that tells you can open DRS, and then you can press the button on the car and it allows you to open DRS. And then normally if you don't have that, if you press the button, it just won't open. But obviously, if your car and the wider like track computer doesn't know where your car is, it can't automate that system. So the team overrides it to go into like manual DRS mode. Let's call that more similar to in qualifying when they can just open it whenever to set their quali lap. They put him in that mode, but then also it seems that somehow they rewired the entire DRS system. And so Russell claims that he pressed the radio button and it opened his DRS. If that is the case, throw that steering wheel in the bin. Someone's bent some pins and some connectors in the back of that thing. Chuck it in the bin. That is not good. So yeah, he got called into the stewards for opening the DRS when he wasn't allowed to. That has already been cleared at the time of recording, so he is not going to get a post-race penalty for that. But just like bizarre, his entire car seemed to just be like fucked, basically, is the technical term for that. I was an electrical engineer. This is what I did. I worked with like system malfunctions like this. The technical term we would use in this situation is his car is fucked. So really fun for Russell there. And because Formula One cars are so electrically dependent now, they even have like a brake-by-wire system. And so you press a pedal that I believe still goes into a pneumatic actuator, but then that's not a full pneumatic linkage to the brake calipers. It's an electronic system that goes to a pneumatic actuator at the axles. But if the entire electronics of your car are going haywire, then that broke as well. And he couldn't brake properly. He was complaining about like brake pressure varying throughout the lap. Not good, Mercedes. He manages to hang on to it, but yeah, the whole timing tower goes down. And then we just have like all kinds of issues. People being reported for track violations when they seemingly didn't get them. Kimi Antonelli was reported for 6 track limits violations, which should be enough to get you, I want to say, 15 seconds of penalty, but he got none of them, so I assume those were false penalties. I guess. All kinds of stuff like this. Just messy. Just messy. The only actual retirement during this race, Carlos Sainz had a collision with, it's Yuki Tsunoda. He slammed into Yuki Tsunoda coming through turn 1. Ripped a hole in his side pod, which threw loads of debris, loads of carbon fiber across the track, which is why we've got a safety car in the middle of this race. He had to retire, so he's the only retirement on track, the only DNF from this race. We do have one other driver not classified. You may have not seen this if you just turned off the race after the podium. Nico Hülkenberg disqualified for plank wear, the same thing that got Lewis Hamilton in China. Yeah, that kind of snuck in there. You maybe wouldn't have noticed because obviously he finished outside the points, and so it's not like he lost out on anything. But yeah, Nico Hülkenberg disqualified for that as well. Not that you would have known, not that the stewards could tell you that because they had no idea what was going on. So yeah, just a messy race organisation-wise. As I was saying in qualifying, I don't know why Formula One continues to have these issues. Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky to have a system that's timing all these cars and sending data all the way around the track. And they always say, we've got however many miles, hundreds of miles of cables running on the track, and it's really tricky. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. Quite frankly, it's not that hard. For an organization that makes this much money and employs this many people, maybe you should employ more people and spend more money on this, because how is it possible that you can have countries with like train networks and they're tracking the position of like thousands of trains everywhere and like all signal positions and all this kind of stuff? And how is it possible that we can have digital networks organizing like the transfers of millions of files every minute, and then Formula One can't track 20 cars? 20 cars. Yeah, physical measurements from sensors aboard a moving car is difficult, but it's not that difficult. It's not that hard. And also, it's not that hard just to keep the camera on someone when they're side by side into a braking zone. It's not that hard. I promise you, it's not that hard. So Formula One really needs to sort out some of this stuff. It's just not a good look. It's just not a good look. If someone new is getting into the sport and then the commentators are talking about these battles, but then the TV direction is showing you something else, it's not a good look when you're trying to follow the race and you're like, oh, this timing tower is really useful. And then that just goes away. If this was someone's first Grand Prix, I wouldn't be surprised if they came out of it being like, oh, we got some overtakes. That was cool. But I had no idea what was going on. It's just a mess, and it just shouldn't be. We've had this sorted for decades. I just don't understand. Just fix it. Just admit you've got a problem and fix it, Formula One. It's just weird. Just bizarre. Anyway, let's go through the finishing positions. Oscar Piastri leads, basically lights the flag. He doesn't lead every lap of the race because he pit, like just with the pit orders and stuff. But effectively on aggregate, he was never overtaken, so he was always leading the race. Comfortable. He was like 12 seconds ahead, then we had a safety car, and then he just drove off into the distance again. Wins by like another 10 seconds or something. A lot. He wins by a lot. George Russell actually holds on to P2 despite the fact that his car had been sent back to like the Stone Ages and the ECU had like imploded and all the electronic wiring had fallen out down at turn 4, you would think by the way he described it. Somehow holds on to P2. Lando Norris was on the back of him for the last few laps, was fighting and had better pace because he is in a McLaren. So probably a couple more laps and Norris would have got P2, but Russell holds on to it. Norris rounds out the podium with P3. Leclerc once again brings it home for P4. Second race in a row. Wait, second race in a row? Yeah, second race in a row. Obviously got disqualified in China, where he actually came P5 though. Once again, Leclerc and Russell are just putting in crazy consistency so far this season. I would say maybe the two most impressive drivers so far this season, Leclerc and Russell. They just haven't put a single foot wrong, really. Just insane for Russell to have 3 podiums already in... You could make an argument Mercedes is the second quickest car, but I think it just looks like that from how good of a job Russell is doing. I think probably they are the third quickest. So yeah, just really phenomenal from Russell and from Leclerc as well. Hamilton gets up into P5. The Ferrari Bahrain pace does come good. And they had a very good strategy on their first couple stints. They were caught out by the safety car and it didn't go so hot for Ferrari after them. They honestly looked like they could have been on for like a double podium the way they were running. But Hamilton gets up from P9 into P5, so good for them. Good points for Ferrari there, now like comfortably into P4 in the championship. And actually, if they continue like this, they'll be P3 in the Constructors' Championship before long. Gasly holds on to P7, but he is overtaken by Verstappen, who gets P6. He was 1 point off Norris for the Drivers' Championship. He's obviously fallen down a bit with a P6 as Norris gets P3. Ocon drags his Haas up into P8. They got pretty, not lucky, but Haas did very well on their strategies today. They made all the right decisions at the safety car. So Ocon goes from grid 14 up to P8 and secures another 4 points for Haas. My bold prediction at the start of the season for Haas to be P10 in Constructors in shambles, in absolute shambles, just due to Haas being pretty consistent. Not all that quick, but pretty consistent. So yeah, Yuki Tsunoda gets P9 and Oliver Behrman also rounds out P10. It was looking like maybe he was going to get some track limits penalty. It was looking like maybe Kimi Antonelli was going to catch him. Kimi Antonelli being in P11, but no, Ollie Behrman holds on to it. P10 up from grid 20. Really impressive. Lewis Hamilton actually won driver of the day. But I would say both of those Haas drivers deserved it over Lewis. Driver of the day voting this year, honestly, I'm convinced is entirely voted on by people who are not watching the race. None of the driver of the day votes have made any sense so far. Like, yeah, Hamilton went grid 9 to P5, which is good, but they were in a car that easily should have been in P5. Ollie Behrman going P20 to P10 is much harder, let me assure you. So yeah, very cool. Antonelli was down in P11, probably should have finished in the points. He was going really well, but then he pit only, I want to say 4 laps or 5 laps before the safety car, and then Mercedes pit him again because he was on softs. And so maybe, his tyres would have cooled down. He would have been overtaken on the restart. Yeah, sure. But they pit him again and dropped him like way out the points. And he just couldn't recover because everyone pit again. So anyway, Antonelli got kind of screwed by the safety car. He looks like he should have probably got like P7 or something in the race. So pretty unlucky for him because he was fighting with Verstappen the whole time. So probably should have finished about the same pace, but just got a bit screwed. But he was scrappy as well. And as good as he is at overtaking people, he can get a bit caught up in traffic. So a bit of a shame for him, a bit of a down ending to an otherwise very good weekend for Kimi Antonelli. Alex Albon P12. Once again, he would be disappointed not to be scoring points because Carlos Sainz qualified P8. Alex Albon would have thought that he should have been starting higher and therefore finishing higher. So he's going to be annoyed not to pick up a point or two in this race. Isaac Kajal P13, kind of the same as they've been finishing every race. Jack Doohan P14. Once again, he would think that he could have scored points here today with Pierre Gasly picking up, 6 points for P7. So Doohan's going to be disappointed with that. Fernando Alonso P15. He would be chuffed, honestly, with P15 currently. Liam Lawson P16 after he gets a 15-second time penalty. Stroll 17. And Bortoletto, last car, P18. Absolutely wild grid order. Pretty wild finishing positions. Impossible to predict this weekend. Anyone who got like the perfect fancy team for this weekend clearly just guessed. Clearly was like rolling dice or smoking something strong because just like a wild weekend for everything. And I guess that brings us on to Championship Watch. The Drivers' Championship. He was looking for a hot minute like Piastri was going to come out of this race leading the Drivers' Championship. He went into the weekend behind Norris by 13 points, but the way they qualified, Piastri on pole and Norris P6 would have seen Piastri taking the lead of the drivers, with Norris recovering back up into P3. He stays in the lead of the Drivers' Championship. 77 points for Norris, 74 points for Oscar Piastri, only 3 points behind. I want to say some commentators made this point again, but if it weren't for Oscar's spin in the wet in Australia, he would be leading the championship. And, that's a weird thing to say, but like, he did spin in Australia, and that is part of the race. So, but quite frankly, Oscar, apart from that, has looked better than Lando so far this year, in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised if Oscar is leading the championship coming out of Jeddah. I think Jeddah is going to be just a straight up fight between the two McLarens, lots of high speed corners, which is just the strength of the McLarens. It should be a McLaren 1-2, and I wouldn't be surprised if Oscar wins that one. So we could see a change of championship leader next weekend. So those two are now right at the top, but still not too far behind. Max Verstappen, 69 points, only 8 points behind Norris. And George Russell, 63 points, matching his driver number, is only 14 points behind. Obviously catches up to Russell by finishing ahead of him. That is actually wild how close Russell is to the two McLarens. And all it takes is like, a lucky Russell win, one of the McLarens spinning out or having an engine malfunction. Russell could be right up there and challenging to like take the lead of this Drivers' Championship. And you love to see it. It's reminiscent back of like the 2010 to 2013, well, not 2013, 2010 to 2012 era. And just like multiple drivers in there, Drivers' Championship lead changing between like more than 2 people. Oh, yes. Pump it into my veins. Also, I completely neglected to mention Max Verstappen on 69 points. Nice. Just thought I'd get that one in there. Didn't want to disappoint anyone by not saying that. But yeah, we then dropped P5 in the Drivers' Championship is Charles Leclerc on 32 points. So we got like Norris 77, Piastri 74, Verstappen 69, Russell 63, and then it goes way down to Leclerc 32. So really, it's a 4-horse race. Once again, if Ferrari have a really good weekend and Leclerc wins and the McLarens finish like 4th, 5th, this can all change. Like, it's 45 points, but people have come back from more. The Ferrari is not looking like it's in a position to win either championship currently, but it's a long season. Let's see what happens. But yeah, a pretty convincing 4-horse race at the front of the Drivers' Championship. I love to see it. Oh, it makes me feel so good. Constructors' Championship, not close in the slightest. McLaren, 151 points. We then have Mercedes, 93 points, 58 points behind them, because while McLaren is swapping between their 2 drivers, and like neither driver has been on every podium. Is that true? Don't fact check that one. But they are consistently, they've won 3 out of 4 races. They are, the quickest car, clearly. So they're well out in the lead. Mercedes, 58 points behind. Red Bull Racing, 80 points behind on 71. Ferrari is now cleanly up into P4. They've managed to shake off Williams. So they're up into P4, 57 points, 94 points behind McLaren. And then P5 in the Constructors' Championship, currently, after a good weekend in Bahrain, is Haas. Haas is P5 in the Constructors. Oh, my predictions in shambles for them being P10. Oh, God. I wanted to actually look down the rest of the Constructors because it's very interesting. Obviously, very strong points for Alpine. Alpine, who are going into this weekend still with 0 Constructors points, have finally got some points on the board with a very strong drive from Pierre Gasly. So we now have Haas P5, Williams is in P6, but only behind Haas by 1 point. Aston Martin is in P7 with 10 points, and they are lucky to be there. RB is in 8th place with 7 points. RB once again has been good in qualifying, but just does not have race pace to match, and so they're kind of 8th is kind of correct for them. Alpine is now up into P9 with 6 points. And actually level with Kick. But Alpine goes ahead on best finish for Pierre's thing. Alpine, I think, are the 5th best car. So to still be down in P9 is so rough. But like teams like Haas have scored so many points early on, like such strong points in Australia, and now pretty good points with their 5 here today. Alpine should be catching them and should be getting right up to fight for P5 in the Constructors. But if Haas keep having just solid weekends, Alpine is going to be stuck down there. And the same for Williams. So yeah, pretty crappy for Alpine, who should be up there fighting for P5, P6 in Constructors. It's looking like it's going to be a while till they get back up there. But once again, it's a long season. We've had 4 races, which still means we have 20 to go. Many points on offer, many storylines still to be had. I am sure of the fact that there's going to be many more great races this season. I remain very excited for Formula 1 in 2025. It's been good so far. It was good today. It's going to be good next time. And next race is Jeddah. As you know, if you watch the channel, I don't like Jeddah as a track. I think it's silly. I think it's a very stupid track, but I will admit it produces interesting race weekends. I don't think it should exist, but it does work. But, maybe a broken clock is right twice a day, and Jeddah's just been correct 3 times. I sound very negative. I do think the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is going to be a good weekend. That is next weekend. We are in a triple header. And so I shall be back next Monday to fill you in on all things Saudi Arabia, or not all things Saudi Arabian, all things Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Do not go anywhere. Until then, have a lovely weekend. Rest up. More Formula 1 action coming very quickly your way. In the meantime, hopefully, an incredibly long, incredibly stupid Mr. V's Garage video coming out this week. I think I promised it last week, and then it took longer to edit than I thought. It's a long video. I will catch you around. Hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast. Maybe I'll be in a real place next weekend. No, I guarantee you I will be in a real non-green screen location next weekend for the podcast, so tune in next time to see where that is. Until then, I've been Mr. V, and I'll Mr. C you later.